Really dim.
They might. Hello there. Welcome to Behind the Scenes of AV Rant. This is episode 610, recording at a different time yet again, but here we are. And yes, this is Behind the Scenes. As someone asked on Facebook, the green screen doesn't work during behind the scenes because we're just live camera feeds. I record my side, Tom records his side, and then I put them together afterwards. And if that's what you want to see, you want to look for the completed 2-hour video version that usually posts on Wednesdays. Definitely the audio will be cleaned up. That's the main thing. Lip sync is still off sometimes in the video, but hey, that's the way things go for the amazing price of $0.
That's right.
That everyone pays to watch and listen to this podcast. So yeah, this is behind the scenes. That means might be audio dropouts because we're just using Google Hangouts. Might be images we're talking about that you're not able to see. If you'd like all of that stuff cleaned up, please look for the full version. It's under the name AV Rant Home Theater Q&A Podcast, and this will be number 610. So with that, I'll switch over to Tom.
We can start. I'm adjusting the AC in here. I'm already sweating.
Always. When are you not adjusting the AC?
Well, I still have 34 emails to read during this podcast.
I guess I better chat at some point.
Yeah, that's right. If I get this glazed look in my eye, I'm going to look like this. All right, hold on here. Let me go on the right screen. And, scroll up to the top. The AC just kicked on. Feels so nice.
There you go.
Here we go. Oh, I didn't check PayPal. Hold on.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
It's behind the scenes. I want to hear it. I want to hear it.
Yeah, for sure. Watching the sausage get made.
The squealing of the pigs. Their last little breath.
We had Richard and Jeff last time. Both with the last initial B.
That's right. The B guys. Yes, it's Iris. No, I bet it's not.
Well, it could be. Iris wrote to us on Facebook.
It is Iris. Iris. Yeah. From Canada. It's Canadian.
Yes, that is correct.
It's great. Thank you, Iris. All right, put her down. All right, here we go.
Yep.
Where am I at? Stop it.
2
Go
minutes.
away. No, here you go. Okay. Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. Recording this on a Tuesday morning this week, so we're all over the place from week to week. But hey, the podcast gets made. That's what matters.
It's almost afternoon here, so it depends on where you are.
That's true.
Finished Iron Fist Season 2.
Oh, wow.
It was really, really good.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear it.
I was like, why wasn't this the first season of Iron Fist? It's so much better. You know what they did, which I have not done yet? I think in a Marvel movie is they had a Marvel series. I think Daredevil season 1, there was only one real villain. There was that.
It was really just Fisk in the first season of Daredevil.
It was really just Fisk. This one, it was really just the one guy.
Okay.
The whole time, which was great. Now,
well, I guess Jessica Jones' first season, I mean, it really was just Purple Man.
That's true.
Wasn't really anybody else.
So all the good seasons, basically, just one
hero, one villain. They square off
for the entire season. Yeah, there was a little bit of a dip. I think around episodes 2 or 3.
Always seems to be.
Yeah. Well, actually, I kind of felt like with Daredevil season 2 and some of the other ones, like that's like right in the middle. It would just like, okay, this is the part where the hero gets so beat up that they can't fight anymore.
Right. Yeah. We have to take a couple episodes off, let them heal. Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, here we go again. And the same sort of thing happened here, but a bunch of other stuff happened that was important.
Right. Unless you're the Punisher and you dislocate your shoulder in episode 8 and then just carry right on.
Yeah, don't worry. Walking it off. But yeah, real good season. The big reveal at the end, I thought was, first of all, I didn't get it at first. I had to go look up what they were talking about. And then once I got it, I was like, yeah, it's still stupid. I thought it was stupid when it happened. I still think it's stupid. But so the big,
I'm still series behind on those shows. I haven't even finished the second season of Jessica Jones, and I'm watching them in order. I'm not going to skip ahead. So I got a ways to go.
I wasn't a real big fan of that season.
Yeah.
I'm,
I still want to watch it.
I'm working on Luke Cage season 2, which I'm like.
I also have that to go. Yep.
All right. This is at AV Rant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You can go to www.avrant.com. Leave us a comment there. Facebook.com/AVRant podcast. YouTube.com/AVRant. Don't leave a comment. I mean, you can leave a comment at YouTube, but we're just going to ignore you because YouTube.
Very likely. I don't know. I respond sometimes.
Facebook is good, though. We respond on Facebook. Yeah. You can contact us directly. Rob at AVRant.com. His Twitter is at First Reflect. I'm Tom at AVRant.com. My Twitter is at AVRant_Tom. Still regret that Twitter handle. To be honest with you. Yeah. All right. Well, at the time I made that one, I made at AVRant_Dina.
That's right.
That's why that happened. We want to thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, you have to support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is by going to www.avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. That will take you to a PayPal donation site. So we want to thank Iris for going to PayPal and leaving us a donation. Those monies will go into our coffers to help pay for hosting fees and other such things. So thank you very much, Iris.
Yeah, Iris, thank you very much for that donation. We appreciate it.
We also want to thank our 72 patrons over at patreon.com. Patreon.com is a service where you can sign up for a monthly donation that is taken from your account and sent around to whatever content creators that you want to I would say employ. It's sort of a salary. So you are employing them to make content.
I don't want to think of it that way. That implies like we are beholden to our patrons, which we feel indebted, but we are
That's
not.
True.
We're not salaried workers.
That's true.
So you are donating. It is a donation for sure. It's just automatic every month.
So 72 people have signed up for that service, including Bradford. So thank you, Bradford.
Yeah, that's patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you'd like to sign up. We are over 70 patrons now. 72 is most definitely squarely into the over 70.
It's true. Yes, and this podcast is not in any way supported by the M&M Nestle Corporation.
His M&M cup mug is back.
The M&M cup. It's the big. Okay, we have 3 large mugs in this cat. This is the second largest. The largest one is
gotcha. Bradford, thank you for very, very much for being a patron. We appreciate that. And thanks so much to all of our 71 other patrons over at patreon.com/AVRant podcast.
Did you enjoy the NES Classic and SNES Classic mini consoles? Sony seems to have noticed how well they sold, and rather than being like Nintendo and just not sell them anymore,
not making anymore. Look, they all sold out. Yep, that's good.
That's good. That's all we were going to make anyways.
They did bring it back, but like a year later.
So they're releasing the PlayStation Classic mini console for $100 on December 3rd. It will have 20 generation-defining games. Battle Arena Toshinden better be in there.
I don't know.
That was like the whole reason I bought that console. Somebody had imported one to a game store in San Francisco where I was living. Excuse me. And they were playing Battle Arena Toshinden or whatever it's called. I think that's what it's called. And I lost my mind. I was like, 3D graphics, like I mean,
probably doesn't look as good as you remember.
No, I played it recently, actually.
PlayStation 1.
That is a generation-defining game as far as I'm concerned. The full list of games has not been revealed as of yet, so we'll see.
Final Fantasy VII, that's on there. They said that for sure. As would be expected. Yeah. I'm hoping Parasite Eve will be on there. That was probably my favorite first PlayStation game, but who knows? That wasn't made by Sony, so.
Yeah, maybe not.
But I mean, neither was Final Fantasy. So. Yeah.
Back in 2012, Samsung started selling TVs that could be upgraded with an Evolution kit so that you could replace the processor and upgrade the HDMI inputs without ever having to buy a whole new TV. I am sure at the time, back in 2012, I scoffed at such an idea. Because I always scoff at such an idea, and I wonder why. They promised to keep their TVs via the optional Evolution kits until 2016, but the last Evolution kit that ever came out was released in 2015. So they said, yeah, it's close enough. After 2016, they stopped the whole Evolution kit program entirely, but a bunch of complaints in Europe, mostly Norway, I didn't know those guys were so angry, but maybe they're just cold, were enough to get Samsung to release one final Evolution kit now in 2018 for 300 euros.
Yep.
Which is about $300 anyways. But so is it what? HDMI what?
It's nothing to do with HDMI. They didn't add any HDMI ports with it. It's pretty much just the processor with their new streaming platform. That's what you get.
For $300, or you could
€300,
$30 and get a Chromecast.
Yeah.
You're done.
Yeah.
Seems.
But they're like, hey, you said till 2016, you were a year short. And I guess to avoid the lawsuit, I don't know. They're like, yeah, here you go. You want it? Here it is.
Knock it out.
Up. You can.
We made 5.
You can talk to. I don't even know if you can talk to Bixby. That was going to be my joke of how you can talk. I don't even know if that. I didn't notice them say Bixby was in there, so that might not even be it, which would be even more hilarious.
What's Bixby? Bixby is
that's their voice assistant. Everybody has to have their own, So Samsung's voice assistant is Bixby, and nobody uses it.
Yeah. Speaking of voice assistants, Amazon decided that the world needs a whole bunch of new Echo devices and their voice assistant in pretty much everything, everywhere, all the time. Yeah. Dude, my Ecobee has Alexa in it, and that stupid thing answers me all the time when I'm not talking to it, and it irritates me. And the other Ecobee says that it'll tell you what temperature it is in the house, but if you ask it to change the temperature or whatever, it'll say it can't connect to the other one, and that it's disconnected. I'm like, I've actually asked it, like the Amazon that's inside of the Ecobee, to tell me what temperature it is on one of the other sensors. It's like, no, the Ecobee's not connected. I'm like, I am talking to you, idiot. It's so aggravating. Anyway. So the 6-inch $130 Echo Sub lets you upgrade a couple of Echo speakers in a 2.1 setup of sound quality garbage. But
6-inch subwoofer in air quotes, yes.
Yes. $35 Echo input has no speakers of any kind built in, and it's basically Amazon's answer to the Chromecast audio. The $200 Echo Link and 30-watt $300 Echo Link amp are pretty much the answers to Sonos Connect.
Yeah, it's actually 60 watts per channel there for the,
well, I say 60.
Echo Link amp. You said 30 watts because there's all the threes all along there, but yeah.
There's an Echo Auto for your car's dashboard. Dude, don't even get me started on that. I mean, you listen to any podcast where they talk about She Who Shall Not Be Named, and your car would be going off like crazy.
I know.
Because they do that all the time. I've actually seen like YouTube streamers will be like, they'll stop their stream and then they'll stop their game, and then to ask a question of She Who Shall Not Be Named. I'm like, dude, stop it. You're killing me.
I mean, the fact that we can't say her name on the podcast shows how popular the thing is, because we can talk about the Google Home Assistant, we can talk about Cortana, we can talk about Siri. We're not worried about setting them off, but the one that starts with an A, can't say that one.
It's like, remember how Netflix was, it still is in everything, but remember how when it first started getting into everything, we were making the jokes about how I was in the toaster and everything? That's what Alexa is literally going to be in your toaster.
Yeah, the last one will definitely, you'll like that.
Yeah. All right, so there's the car dashboard, Eco Smart plugs, and even the microwave to connect to your Eco devices. Now, a microwave. You need a microwave.
Now, the microwave doesn't actually have microphones built into the microwave, but you connect it to your other Echo devices, and then it will. You can control it with your voice that way. Same with the smart plugs. They don't actually. I thought the smart plugs for sure were going to have microphones built in. I thought that was the whole point. It was like, okay, now every electrical outlet is just listening to you, so no matter where you go. I thought that was the idea, but apparently no. It connects over your Wi-Fi network to some other Echo device, so it's just a smart plug. You can control with the voice.
I might not hate that. I might want that for a Daisy.
Smart plugs, all right.
Yeah,
it's getting into the whole home automation. But yes, Echoes everywhere. A hugely confusing lineup, but sort through it. If you want to plug it in and talk to it, they got something now.
All right. And I came across a news article. Imperial Audio has introduced an add-on super tweeter, much to my dismay.
Yeah.
It looks like it's a ribbon super tweeter with adjustable crossover points from 6 to 15 kilohertz. I think it plays down to 2. Is that right?
So there was some mention of that in there, but the crossover, the lowest crossover you can give it, according to the little write-up that they had, was 6 kilohertz. So it is a super tweeter. You're not crossing over your mid-range driver at 6 kilohertz.
No, you're not. So they're like, I mean,
I don't know. This is silly. And I mean, the write-up that they have is. I mean, when you talk about super tweeters,
it's not April Fool's, right? It's not April Fool's.
It's not. It can't
like
be.
It feels like it.
I mean, okay, so what was my favorite line there? Like it was talking about feeling the treble sound pressure. Feeling. Like very specifically the word feeling the treble sound pressure. I'm like, if you are feeling sound pressure from sound waves that are above 20 kilohertz, which is what a super tweeter is for, wow, like that. Your ears will be bleeding long before you feel it. I guess that's how you would feel it. That is a terrible thing to have written up there. I don't know what their marketing department was thinking, but yeah.
They're thinking that the people who buy these things aren't really knowledgeable about how sound works anyways. I mean, they're talking about
yeah, clearly it's
and
for the high res audio people who are like, I've got to have stuff above 20 kilohertz.
how much is this thing?
I don't know. Who cares? Don't buy it for one.
Well, yeah, don't buy this.
Yeah, frequency response 2,000 to 30,000. That's it.
Yeah,
It only goes up to 30,000 hertz.
That's what it says.
It's an extra 10. It's a half an octave.
They also talk about this, about how as high as that high res digital files have audio frequencies as high as 100 kilohertz.
That's right. What is the point of this thing?
But we're only going to 30 because you can't even hear
and
past
it's just
20.
they didn't even give like the response, just frequency response.
Yeah.
They didn't even give a plus minus 3 decibel point. What in the... Don't buy this, folks. I don't know what they're doing. I guess they're throwing it out there to see if it sticks, but this is... Not happy about that. That's a dumb product.
There is an off.
Yeah.
For the crossover. So you can do six crossovers or off.
Or off.
So that'll go down to 2
It responds down to 2 kilohertz. I have no idea how much it's rolled off, but oh, man.
But their big claim to fame is that they have a phase knob, I guess, is the deal. Because so that you can integrate it. Is that right? No.
Well, like we talked about, you can have phase misalignments in a crossover, and now you're going to have a...
There's no phase knob on this thing. What are they talking about?
Who cares? This is so...
There's
we don't like it when companies that we like introduce products that are really dumb, and this is really dumb. Don't get this.
This is quite bad. Yeah. Don't get this. And you know what makes me... I don't know. It always bothers me whenever somebody... Because it makes it more difficult for me to recommend them. Like if...
That's right, yeah.
If SVS started selling, I don't know, what could they sell as or spiked feet for their subs?
Sure,
like that's not...
Well, I mean, I'm not even opposed to selling spiked feet. There's a place for spiked feet. It's if you claim that it's decoupling it.
Yeah.
Then I'd be, but that's marketing. It could be fixed. But I don't know.
All right, so the HGTV Test posted their video about the new JVC 4K projectors, and Vincent Teo confirmed that they've sped up the HDMI handshake. So there we go.
He made a point of mentioning that. So that was a question from last week. We had no idea, but he has seen them in person. They are still pre-production models, but he's like, I asked them specifically about it because people complain how long it takes to do your HDMI handshake. And they're like, yep, it's faster now. Didn't say exactly how much faster, but it couldn't be any slower. So
2 milliseconds faster.
Yeah, really. It definitely could not be slower. So that's good to hear. Hopefully it's on par with most other devices at this point.
All right, let's get into these questions. Mike, this is from last week. I think the only question we had last week. Mike has been framing and wiring his home theater himself. He's got 2 kids, so the process has been slower than he would have liked. But it's almost ready for drywall now, so he wants to solidify his wiring before he closes up the walls and the ceiling. Mike is a fellow who already owns some ELAC debut speakers, and he wasn't sure if he wanted to try mounting them on his walls as surrounds and surround backs. And he also wasn't sure whether he wanted 1 pair or 2 pair of side surround speakers for his 2 rows of seating. He wound up buying 6 pairs of Focal Superbird on-wall speakers. His wife would prefer the speakers to be hidden, so he's building acoustically transparent columns, and the Superbirds will go inside. Since he will have 2 side surround speakers on each side, he should wire them in series, right?
Yes,
that's true.
Yeah, he's powering everything off an AV receiver. So if you wire them in parallel, you could basically take their stated impedance and cut it in half if you wired them in parallel.
That would be 4 ohms.
It'd be 4 ohms in this case. Whereas if you wire them in series, you can basically add the 2 impedances together, which will be 16 ohms in this case, which is perfectly fine. Look on the back of any AV receiver, it'll say it can drive. Usually it'll say between 6 and 16 ohms is the most common numbers that you'll see. So having them wired in series is the way to go.
So there's a slight issue. He hasn't 100% decided how far back he's going to put his 2nd row of seats. And he'd like to be able to nail that down after the room is finished, and he can play with the seating location at that point. So he can run speaker wire from his receiver, which is outside the theater in a separate room, to the location for his 1st row. That much is nailed down. But then he need to get a speaker wire from the front row column to the back row column, and a wire from the back row column all the way back to his receiver, correct? That is correct.
Yeah, that's how a series wiring would go. But I've got a good idea for how to achieve this without a problem.
Yeah. He will have trim around the columns and baseboard trim. So would it be okay to figure out the wiring after the room is finished and just use the trim to hide the wire runs? Yep. That'll work just fine.
Yeah, this should be fine. So what I would have you do is, you said your front row position is nailed down. You know where the front column for that side surround speaker is going to be. So run your speaker wire from your AV receiver in your separate room to your front column position where the first side surround speaker is going to be. But make that wire super duper extra long. Leave a whole bunch of extra length. Because the way this is going to end up being is that let's just say, red wire from the AV receiver is going to go to the red binding post of your first surround speaker, the one that's in front. But then the black binding post on your AV receiver is going to go to the black binding post of the second surround speaker that's at the back. And then there's just going to be one wire that goes from the red binding post of the back, like the side surround speaker that is farther back to where the second row is. It's going to go from that black binding post, or did I get that backwards? From the red binding post on that one to the black binding post on the front side surround speaker.
That's true. Yes.
So if you just run one regular pair of speaker wire to the front section, but you leave it extra long, now you can clip the red end so that it's the proper length for that front one, but you'll have the extra length left over that it could run down.
You probably want to triple the distance you think you're
I mean, make sure it's extra long, because speaker wire isn't terribly expensive. So it could run down the side trim of the first column through the baseboard and then up the side trim of the second column and connect to the black binding post of the second speaker, as long as you've left that length. Then you just need one wire that goes from the red binding post of the one that's farther back, goes down the trim, along the baseboard, up the trim, and connects to the black binding post of the side speaker that's towards the front. So you can definitely hide, you're essentially hiding two wires behind trim. That should be fine. And as far as running it right now, you just have to run it to the front one, but you leave a whole bunch of extra length so you can run the one black wire from the front column to the back column. And that's it. Should be fine.
Yes.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay.
So he's got 4 Atmos speakers laid out, top, front, and top rears. Should he maybe run wires for top middles as well? They need to have the option for 6 overhead speakers. Any value to this, or should he just stop at 4 overheads? I mean, dude, you got it open. Speaker wire is cheap. I'd go ahead and do it. I would make sure that those top middles, you want to optimize them for your front seat, since that's going to be your main seat.
Well, because he was questioning where to install his top fronts and top rears, and we were like, just optimize it for the front row of seats, because he was like, the back row is not getting used as much anyway. So assuming you've already done that, then as well, top middles. Now, I would say it's maybe a little questionable, because of course there's a whole range where your top fronts and top rears could be.
Sure.
If they're, say, 4.5 or 5 feet in front of you and 4.5 or 5 feet behind you, then that leaves a pretty good spread between front and rear. In which case, top middles would make sense to me. Now, if you've only put them 3 feet in front of you and 3 feet behind you, and they're really only 6 feet apart, then top middles maybe don't make quite as much sense. So I would question that a little bit based on how much of a spread you have between your fronts and rears. But given everything's open, now is the time to run speaker wire for sure. And there are options for having 6 overheads now. You could have a Denon X8500, you could have a Marantz Pre-Pro, their 8805, or you've got that Emotiva that is supposedly coming out November 15th. We'll see if that RMC one actually comes out. But there are options now that are, they're expensive, $4,000 or $5,000, but within the realm of possibility that you might eventually have one. So, yeah.
Is there a limit to how long of an extension cord he could put on the Odyssey microphone cable? With his receiver in a separate room, he's a bit concerned about running the audio setup. Hey, man, if it works, it works. It's not going to be because when you plug in the microphone, it immediately sends your receiver into the Odyssey calibration.
That's right.
So if you plug in an extension and then you plug it into your microphone, and it doesn't automatically go into audio, and it's not working. You need a shorter extension. I don't think it'll be a problem. This is not a
sometimes
high-powered
people
signal.
worry like, oh, I've like increased the length of the cable, so will it get the timing right? It's traveling nearly the speed of light, so there's a considerably faster than the speed of sound. Not a problem as far as that goes.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
The one thing I would caution you to do is make sure that the extension cable you get is a mono
Right.
3.5 millimeter extension, because a lot of the ones you'll find are stereo, and
Right.
that might not work properly. The little metal bits don't always line up properly when you get a stereo 3.5 millimeter instead of a mono. So make sure you get a mono. But other than that, should be fine.
You should be able to run as long as an extension as you
Yeah.
need. So he wants a super deep black levels and high contrast of a JVC projector, and he wants lens memory. But of course, JVC just announced their new 4K projector models, and Sony has a new lineup too. Should he stick with his plans of getting a JVC X790, or should he consider one of the new genuine 4K resolution models? I mean, you
How
should
much
always
money you got?
yeah, really. You should always consider it. I mean, I would consider it. Even I would at least take a look at it and see if it fits within my budget. And if it doesn't, then I'd say okay, and then no. But if it does fit within your budget, I mean, it sounds like for the HDMI handshake alone, it might be worth getting the
Oh
other
yeah,
one.
there is that, the faster HDMI handshaking. I mean, I will say on the Sony side, he specifically said he wants lens memory, which means you can't get the entry level model, the $5,000 model. What is
That's
it?
the entry level?
Well,
$5,000?
for genuine 4K,
Oh yeah, okay.
it's $5,000 is their least expensive. Now I think it's, oh shoot, what's the model number now? 295 ES, I think, is the brand new one they just announced at 5,000. And there was the 285 ES from last year that was $5,000 as well. Those ones don't have lens memory, so that for that feature that wouldn't work. You'd have to go up to their, what is it, $8,500 one, the next step up. That's the $5 or $695 now. I'm forgetting the model. I think it's the $695 is the brand new one they just announced, but they're up in the $8,500 range. It's getting pretty pricey there. Now on the JVC side, you do have lens memory and all that in their least expensive model, which is $6,000. That's their least expensive of the brand new genuine 4K ones. That would be the NX5 in their lineup, or the RS1000 if you're on the JVC Pro side. So yeah, that does have the lens memory, but now it's $6,000, and that one doesn't have as high native contrast as the X790 does. To get similar native contrast as the X790, you have to go up to JVC's $8,000 NX7. So either way, if you're wanting the genuine 4K with the same high contrast that the X790 offers you, and you want lens memory, you're talking about over $8,000, which seems pretty pricey, but I mean, hey, it's going to be a really nice projector. On the other hand, the X790 is now available for $4,000, so it's half the price.
Yeah, I don't know.
You're doing the wobble version of 4K, right? It's a 1080p panel, but they're wobbling it to give you the pseudo 4K. But it gives you the really high contrast. It gives you the full DCI P3 color because it has the color filter to give you 100% of DCI P3 color if you want it. It's got the lens memory, so for $4,000, I'm like, yeah, that's the way I'd be leaning. I guess if the 30-second long HDMI handshakes bug you to no end, and that's worth $4,000 to you, then there's that. But it's hard to argue against the X790.
All right. So any suggestions on the easiest way to sell his ELAC speakers, since he definitely won't be using them anymore? He made a post on AVS forum, but nobody wanted to pay for shipping.
Yeah.
I know. I am not surprised at that. I mean, AudioGone is kind of like the go-to online resource for selling things, but really, in the case of lower dollar items, Craigslist,
absolutely, or even eBay. But I mean, Craigslist, you're not even paying anything yourself to list it, basically.
I mean, I would just post. I mean, I would post it on Craigslist, and
and the ELAC speakers are like popular enough and inexpensive enough that. Yeah, I think they would probably sell. I'd try. But
honestly, I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, if you're thinking about spending $8,000 on a receiver, I don't know how much this is going to offset that cost. And do you have a friend or a family member who doesn't have home theater who would benefit from?
Yeah, because ELACs are nice speakers. I like those debut speakers.
This is a way of maybe spreading the infection of home theater, getting somebody else the bug, as they say. Because I would consider just giving them away. Now, if you don't want to, believe me, I understand. I've given away lots and lots of speakers because I can't sell them, but and I don't want to. But that's just another another option there.
Yeah, Craigslist and Audio Gone if you don't do that. That's what I'd recommend.
All right, Boschko. Boschko asked previously for battery backup uninterruptible power supply models that he could add to his APC G5 power conditioner. I have both not had enough coffee, and I've had just enough to make my mouth kind of
a little jittery.
So I balance out here. Once he started researching the models we suggested, it seems like the battery units could do everything the G5 already does. Plus, they have a battery. So is his G5 doing anything the battery backup wouldn't do? Should he just sell his G5 and replace it rather than adding to it? The answer to that question is 100% yes. I think, to be honest with you, I don't really,
especially if you're going for a J25 or a J35, which actually does more than your G5 is already doing, in addition to the battery. In that the J35 has voltage regulation, which your G5 does not.
A perfect example of a question that we answer because it was asked, but the real answer is something different. No, I mean, people don't always realize that. They're like, I want to do this thing, and then you're like, oh, just get a new receiver. No, I don't want to get a new receiver. I want to do it this other way. We're like, okay, well, do it this other way. It costs more than a new receiver, but yes, you can do it in this other way.
Or and this is a lot more power plugs to plug in. Often the case.
Yeah, and this is another one of those situations where it's like, I want to just add a battery backup for this one thing, but the solutions basically to that also negate everything else I already have, and people don't often want to hear that. So a lot of times we just answer the question. But in this case, if you're going for battery backup, unless you are running out of outlets, there's almost no reason to keep the G5 if you're going to get another one of the higher end JVC, APC. I almost say JVC, APC models. I'm gonna have some more coffee.
There are a couple of things. So like your G5 is rack mountable, and maybe that's the very reason you got it, is that it has the rack ears. So there's that. However, most racks allow you to install a shelf so that you can put something in there that doesn't have rack ears. So a J25 or a J35 would slide right onto a rack shelf, no problem, because they're the same size as pretty much any other component. They're about the same size as your G5, a little bit taller, I believe. But yeah, as long as you can install a shelf in your rack, then that would work just fine. The other thing is that the G5, it does have 9 outlets because it has 8 on the back and then 1 on the front.
Okay.
Whereas the J25 and J35 both have 8 outlets. They don't have an outlet on the front. But the G5, all of the outlets allow the full 15 amps of your wall outlet through. Whereas on the J25 or the J35, they have 2 outlets that are labeled as high current surge only. Those are not connected to the battery. Those 2 outlets allow the full 15 amps through, but the other 6 outlets on the J25 or J35, those are connected to the battery, and those only allow 12 amps through. Now, usually that's no problem because your television is never going to need the full 15 amps. Any of your component devices like your Blu-ray player or your cable box or whatever, they're not going to need anything close to the 15 amps. It's really only your high-powered audio amplifier or your subwoofer, and those we don't want connected to the battery and voltage regulation anyway. Right. We want them connected to surge only, so that usually works out just fine. But I don't know, maybe you got 4 or 5 devices that for some reason might need the full 15 amps. That could be a reason to keep the G5. But I think all those things that the G5 offers, I think, are unlikely necessities. So I would, replace it with a J25 or a J35 if you want voltage regulation.
Yeah, lastly, he asks, with this G5, does it protect its equipment in any way when the power goes out, or is it only doing something while the power is running? Well, it should protect from surges no matter what. I mean, that's right, that's kind of what they're for. So, that is a passive ability. Now, the rest of the active stuff that it needs power for, if it's doing any sort of voltage regulation or,
it's doing power filtering. So, of course, that would only be active when the power is running.
But the rest of it, it has to, and to be UL certified, it's got to be able to take a surge, no matter if it's got power going through it or not.
Yeah, so like you had a blackout, then lightning strikes somewhere near your place. Probably isn't actually going to... they say it protects against lightning strikes, but that's always a bit of an overstatement. Yeah. If lightning hits your house, pretty much nothing is really going to save you. But a surge comes along during a blackout or when the power kicks back on, and sometimes there's a big surge that comes through your power lines when the power kicks back on. It will protect you against that, but so will a J25 or a J35. That's the same thing as far as their surge protection goes. So yeah, I mean, obviously the one with the battery allows things to keep running during a blackout for some amount of time, given how whatever the battery capacity is and how many things you have plugged into it. So yeah, that'd be about it though.
Yeah, last night it was crazy. Lightning storm here.
Mm-hmm.
It was like I went to the climbing gym last night with my son. I'm like, we got to get in fast because I mean there was lightning striking out and there's rain and there's water everywhere. I'm like, we got to get out of here. This is crazy. I was surprised that we didn't lose power or somebody didn't lose power, but it was nuts last night. And it had me thinking about this question too because of that. Now, Carl says, with Movie Pass having all sorts of problems, what do we think about other theater subscription services? In particular, what about Cinema?
Cinemia.
Cinemia?
It's like cinema, but spelled with an S instead of a C, and then Mia instead of Ma. Cinemia, anyway.
Sounds like sin and enema stuck together, which is never... I don't know why they chose... Do people not focus group these names? You know, it really irritates me when I see a
Put
name.
it into the search engine. Anyone else got this name? Nope. Great. We're grabbing it.
We're good. Cinemia, whatever, who recently announced an unlimited plan for $3 per month.
They did announce it, but...
let me tell you what I think about these movie servers. These things are, for now, much like that. Remember there was the little baby antennas all over the place? What was that service called? Aereo or something like that?
Yeah, Aereo. That was right. Yeah, where they said they had the dime-sized antennas.
Yeah, and everybody's like, this is too good to be true. This is too good to be. They're never going to make it. I know, like the local theater, the AMC theaters, whatever. Now they've got their own things and stuff like that, and that's the only one I think you can trust.
So that is the AMC Stubbs A List, $20 a month for now. I think what is it? 3 movies per week you're allowed to see on that one, which, I mean, if you actually use that, you're way ahead because they don't limit. You can go to you can go to their Dolby Cinemas on that. You can go to their IMAX theaters on that. It's all the same price. So yeah, the AMC Stubbs A-List, I'm like A-okay with that. Now, they said if you sign up for a full year, they lock in that price, which means they're definitely thinking about raising the price at some point, which they would have to. They would have to. I mean, the only way they make money is if you sign up, pay every month, and then just never go to the movies. Because even if you went to 2 movies, they're essentially behind. I guess if you went to one movie, they're
that's
ahead.
not where they're making their money, though. They're not making it on...
Yeah, they want you in the theater to buy their concessions and stuff. Yeah, and it doesn't. Yeah. So, Stubbs A-List, I'm all in favor of. Now, Cinemia, okay. So, first of all, there was this announcement. It was only last week, and they're like, we're bringing out an unlimited plan. It'll be $30 a month. Like, MoviePass dropped their unlimited plan all the way down to $10 a month, just so they could try and hit their 1 million subscriber thing, which they did. Then they went completely defunct. Everybody left. They completely changed the plan. They're like, well, now you can only see 2 movies a month, and we select which ones they are, and they're not movies anybody wants to see. Hey, keep giving us your $10 every month. Like, they went nuts. MoviePass is insane. But Cinemia is like, okay, we're doing $30 a month, unlimited. They announced this whole thing. They're like, oh, maximum of 6 movies in a day, which I'm like, does that even fit? Is the movie theater even open that long?
I was gonna say, let me six movies in a day. If you could hop from one movie to the other,
like
and
they were perfectly lined up,
they were all 90 minutes long. That's still
but,
what is that? Like, it's 3 hours for 2 movies, so that's 9 hours of movies a day. I mean, you should be able to fit that in. They're usually open till 10 p.m.
But not even a week later, you go there now, that plan isn't there. There's no unlimited plan anymore. Now there is a 30 movies in 30 days, 1 movie per day for $30 a month. That's the one they're offering now, a movie a day. I don't know what happens in February, but,
You only pay $29, $28.
I don't think so. But in any case, if you go there next week, it'll be different again, because the thing is, I tried Cinemia. I never actually went to a movie on Cinemia because they never sent me the membership card after 3 months of waiting, even though they charged my card immediately upon me signing up.
Sure.
So I did manage to get a refund by the only way you can get in touch with anyone at Cinemia, which is via Twitter. Because they don't respond to their emails, they don't respond to their contact form, and they don't list a phone number. And if you look up their address that they have listed in North America, it's just a dummy place. It's just a P.O. box. Yeah. So they don't really exist in North America. I wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pole, sorry to say. I mean, I will say...
touched them. You already touched them.
I gave it a try. I mean, I will say they didn't completely rip me off. I got my money back. I'm happy about that. So I won't say that they're a 100% scam. But I mean, like I said, go there next week. Their plans will be different. Their plans are different every single week. And now they're like, yeah, we don't really do the membership card thing anymore because that wasn't really working. So now you just go through our app. And if you look at the reviews of anyone using their app, they're like, yeah, it says on their app that you can buy movie tickets in advance, but it doesn't work. So like, just no. AMC stubs A-list if you have access to an AMC theater. I'll give that a thumbs up, but anything else I wouldn't recommend. I mean, if you want to try, I mean, when I signed up, they're like, yeah, we have monthly plans and yearly plans, except none of the monthly plans were available. You had to pay for a full year in advance. Now they've got monthly plans listed again. I guess you could try it, but then they're like, if you sign up for a monthly plan, we have to charge you a setup fee, an initiation fee, which is like $30.
Yeah. I was just at that.
It's just no, don't do it.
I was at a embroidery place for the climbing business, and I just picked up a bunch of shirts I had done. It came out really nice, but I was noticing that they had a sign up. It was like, oh, because of the blah blah blah, we now have a minimum of $100. $100 order is the minimum for some whatever product they were talking about on there. They're like, if you want less, there's a $50 less than minimum fee. I'm like, doesn't that put you over the minimum immediately? But
pretty close. I guess if you're ordering $20 worth, you're coming out somewhat
one
ahead.
Shirt, we will make it for you, but it will cost you $50 plus the cost of the shirt. All right, Nathan says, looking through the specs of the new iPhone models in iOS 12, it appears as though native support for FLAC files has finally been added. For those who don't know, FLAC is a free, essentially, format for uncompressed or file size compressed, but not bandwidth or whatever compressed.
Yeah, it stands for free lossless audio codec. That's what FLAC stands for. So it is a lossless compression. So
Apple's got their own, the Apple lossless, and WAV files are of course lossless as well.
And WAV files are uncompressed.
Microsoft, does Microsoft have their own? I don't remember them having their own.
Not that I can recall.
I can't remember. Yeah. Anyway, so it appears as though the native support for FLAC files has been added to whatever. Do we have any further information regarding FLAC file support and under what circumstances it can be played back on the iPhone running iOS 12? No, do not. I do not own the iPhone, and I'm not going to own the iPhone. I'm not interested in owning an iPhone. My wife has an iPhone, and I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. And I have owned my Mac ever since I started writing almost for Audioholics. I think it was a couple of years. My second computer after, I got one laptop, which was a PC, and then I got a Mac, and I've had Macs ever since, and they've progressively hated them more and more the longer we've gone on. And I've gotten to the point now where I can't stand them. So, I've given them a chance. I've been the Apple fanboy. I am not any longer.
Well, FLAC support was kind of added back in iOS 11, but iTunes does not support FLAC, and it still doesn't. And the native music app on your iPhone didn't support FLAC in iOS 11, and it still doesn't in iOS 12. So as far as like putting FLAC files into your iTunes library and loading them onto your phone and playing them like all the rest of your music, nope. It's the same situation as it was in iOS 11. Now, does the iPhone have the ability to play back FLAC files? Yes, it does. And it's pretty much the same as it was in iOS 11. You can upload FLAC files to your iCloud account.
Okay.
At which point they'll be accessible in your Files app on your iPhone. And if you just click the file there, it'll play. I mean, it's a FLAC file. It's streaming down from your iCloud, or you could side load it using one of the third-party programs to load files onto your iPhone, at which point you can see them in your Files app. If you just click on a FLAC file there, it'll play. So the iPhone is hardware capable of playing back a FLAC file. You could also use some third-party music playback software, and those will support FLAC, and the iPhone will play it. But if you were hoping that you could just use your iTunes library and the native music app to play things, then nope. Same situation as it was in iOS 11. That's it.
And that's why I hate Apple right there. That right there in the nutshell is why I don't like it, because it makes everything hard.
you can quite easily convert FLAC files to ALAC files, the Apple lossless
Right.
audio codec. You can convert that on your computer, and then ALAC, of course, will go nicely into iTunes and play in the native music app. So that'd be a way. But then I think the reason people have FLAC is because almost everything else plays FLAC natively and not necessarily ALAC, although a lot of things do play
Yeah,
the
they
Apple
do
lossless
do
audio
stuff.
codec as well.
See,
So,
I initially uploaded everything as a. I think it was a. I don't remember how I did it, but I had it either as FLAC or something lossless,
mhm.
and I had to convert them all to
Yeah.
ALAC so I could get them into my Mac.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, I have no now that I have no iPhone or anything, I have no way of getting to any of my music anymore. I'm like, I guess
mean,
Pandora's it.
I just put everything into 320 kilobit AAC, and
Yeah,
everything plays that.
Yeah,
So, and I'm not worried about, yes, 320 kilobit AAC is lossy. What comes out is not exactly what went in. I have done multiple blind listening tests. I can't hear the difference.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
I'm fine with it.
Bob's in-laws want to start using Netflix. Bob decided to get them a couple of Amazon Fire Sticks to add Netflix access to their 2 TVs, although the Fire Sticks are both still in their boxes in case he decides to return them. All right. The TVs are quite old and only have a single HDMI input each, and those are taken up by a DVD player and cable box, respectively. So they watch cable in one room and DVDs in the other.
That seems to be the case.
It seems like an upgraded TV. Bob supposes he could switch those 2 sources over to analog video connections so that the Fire Sticks could use the HDMI ports, but he's also thinking that he could maybe add HDMI switches instead. But he's leery of an HDMI switch solution. He doesn't want a second remote. This needs to be as dead simple as possible. He doesn't want tech support phone calls every time they want to switch over.
Yep.
So will an auto-switching HDMI switch work reliably, or is there a rock-solid works every time solution for this?
With a stick and a cable box and auto switching?
Well, I mean, as long as... So the cable box is usually always on.
Yeah.
That's one of the problems. So what you end up having to do is having to put, so the switches are usually ordered. So like number 1 is the highest priority. Number 2 is the second highest priority. 3, 4, 5, 6, however many inputs you've got. So if you put the cable box at the end.
Yeah. In the last slot. Yeah.
And then you put anything else in front of it, then when the thing in front of it turns on, it should take precedent over the cable box.
But the problem is that the Amazon Fire TV stick, much like an NVIDIA Shield or most other streaming boxes, it also never really turns off.
Oh, jeez.
So I don't know if auto switching would work. I wouldn't. I mean, you could give it a try.
You could give it a try, yeah. But in the case of the DVD player, it would definitely work because
the DVD player would be fine.
You could put the DVD player. You just put the DVD player in front, basically.
Yeah.
The DVD player, when it turns off, it turns 100% off.
That's right.
So for that one, it's fine. It's the cable box which is going to be your issue.
Yeah, the cable box and the Fire TV. I'm not sure either of those is going to turn off enough that the switch will then go over to the other device, whichever way you order. Now, if you want to try one that has auto switching, and it does come with a little IR remote. So, I mean, that'll always work, right? If you've got your cable box and your Fire TV stick, and you're like, I want to switch over to the other one, then if the auto switching doesn't work, you can use the little included IR remote. So I like the HDMI switches from Sewell. They have their switch deck. They have a switch deck that is 3 HDMI ins with 1 HDMI out, or one that is 5 HDMI ins with 1 HDMI out. I don't know, pick your poison, but the one that has 3 in is only $45. So it has auto switching, and it comes with a little IR remote. You could give that a try.
Well, what about just, first of all, the other solution is going to work no matter what. We know that, right? The DVD one will be fine.
Yeah, the DVD one will be fine. Yeah.
The other one, though, why don't you get them a Harmony? And it doesn't have to be one of the high-end Harmonies.
He said you don't want tech support calls. Do you know of any calls he's going to get if he gets the
No, you get the Harmony where you have the watch TV, watch something else button. And he should be able to program that, and it should be no problem. And then there's a help button on there, too, where you press the help button, and it says, what's not working? Did this fix it? Did this fix it? Did this fix it?
I know. People have such a hard time converting over to the activities version of things versus the I am controlling one device at a time mentality. I've met so many people
who have 2 remotes, then that's just the solution, right? I mean, this is the.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to get the real expensive Harmony. You get the
Now,
other one, and you can just write right on there. Just write
the,
on there, just like literally with whiteout. TV, TV, Netflix. A lot of them have Netflix buttons, anyways.
I guess so. Now, the one other thing I thought of, which is that, again, over at Sewell, they actually have a little device. It's completely unpowered. It's the IBIS. They have a pro one and a non-pro one, but might as well get the pro one in case they ever upgrade to 4K or whatever, because it's only $25. Now, this little device has got two HDMIs on one side and one HDMI on the other side, but it's completely passive. You're literally just switching between, okay, that one output, or it could be the input. It doesn't really matter. It's bi-directional. I mean, you're literally just switching from like which of the two is connected to the one on the other side. It's like you're physically moving a wire back and forth inside, and it's just a physical button on the top that you're like, this side or the other side, this side or the other side. I mean, yes, you'd have to physically get up and go over there and click the button, but there is one button. It actually even lights up like, are you on HDMI 1 or HDMI 2? You can't get any more rock solid, this will never fail on you than that. If you only want to control it from the couch, then I guess that's a problem, because you would have to physically go up there and press the button. But that is as rock solid.
Cable, two HDMI, run an HDMI cable all the way from the cable box to the back of the room.
Well, all the way from the TV.
And then this
little box, which you can put on the coffee table.
On the coffee table in the back of the room. And then the HDMI cable from the cable box, which is probably at the front of the room anyways, to the back of the room to this little box. And then plug the Fire Stick into the other one. And then you just toggle it right there.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that is the most 100% reliable. Nobody could possibly be confused by this one. It's like, do you want this device or this device? And that's it. That's all you can possibly do. And there's no power cord to plug in or anything. It is just physically switching between which port is going to which one. So you could do that. $25.
Might be easier just to buy a new TV.
You could, yeah. Then you have to switch inputs on the TV, which they're not used to doing.
Still, the Harmony remote is the real solution here.
Right.
Joe wrote this a while back when he was getting stuttering playback using Plex or JRiver on this HDPC. We suggested a bunch of changes on both his LG OLED and in his computer, and after a bunch of fiddling, he did manage to get a stable picture. Unfortunately, switching between HDR and SDR content isn't a smooth process, since the change in the signal isn't always properly detected, so he's sort of given up for now. He's decided he'd like to try using an NVIDIA Shield instead, but one issue is that his receiver is a Yamaha RX A3050, which is old enough that it does not support 4K 60 signals, only 4K 30 at best, which is 4K 30 frames per second.
Now, I want to talk on that for a little bit. First of all, I'm glad that at least the stuttering frame rate thing, that the settings we suggested, which involved like putting your LG OLED into PC input mode.
Right.
That was the thing on that side, making sure that it had the full 18 gigabits ready to come in, and then on the other side going into your video card settings or your Intel integrated graphics settings and making sure that's outputting like the 23.976 thing that they label as 23 frames per second. So there's a bunch of stuff there. I'm glad that did kind of work. But yes, I know well the problems of an HTPC connected via HDMI to a display, and how you switch content between HDR, SDR, or frame rates or whatever, and it tries to do that new handshake, and sometimes it just doesn't work. And you got to turn everything off and turn it all back on again, and then it usually does work. But that's a huge hassle, especially if you're trying to explain it to someone else in your house. Yeah, I can see why you would give up, because I did too, and I also switched over to an NVIDIA Shield. But I did want to mention on that Yamaha RX A3050, in its specs, it does say that it supports 4K at 60 hertz with 444 chroma subsampling, which is usually the thing you would look for to say that it supports the full 18 gigabits. So I'm not sure. I'm sure he was doing this with his computer, because that's the source that he had that would output this, and I'm sure it didn't work when he's like set it to 4K 60. I'm wondering if it was set to 4K 60, a computer would be outputting RGB, which should be the same bandwidth as 444. That's uncompressed. It hasn't done any chroma subsampling if it's a 444 signal, which the Yamaha is supposed to be able to handle at 4K resolution at 60 frames per second. But maybe the computer was outputting 12-bit color depth.
You're saying that this is not going to be an issue.
I'm saying it should work.
Yeah.
The Yamaha should be able to pass this through. There were the HDMI ports that they technically support 4K at 60 at 444. Technically they do, but they actually had like 15.6 or 13.2 gigabits per second instead of 18. It was like higher than the 10.2 gigabits per second, which would limit you to 30 frames per second at 4K resolution, but it wasn't quite the full 18. Actually, last year's Sony projectors had that. Their 4K projectors had that weird in-between one that was like 13.2 or 15.6 or something instead of the full 18. So maybe that's what's going on with the Yamaha, because I'm like, he tried it, it didn't work, so something went wrong.
Right.
But they do claim that it can do 4K 60 at 444. So the NVIDIA Shield will definitely not be outputting RGB unless you specifically tell it to, which it won't do by default. And it should be fine, because it actually defaults. I mean, it's kind of answering a second question, but it actually defaults, if you connected it to your LG OLED, to sending 4K resolution, 60 frames per second at 422 or 420. So it is doing some chroma subsampling, which reduces the bandwidth.
Yeah, that should. I mean, honestly,
so the NVIDIA Shield should be fine going through the
chroma subsampling. Is I mean, I don't see any real benefit to going 444 other than.
Well, on a PC, it kind of makes sense if you're looking at a website that has a colored background with colored text.
Yeah.
Then you want the 444.
Those people should.
If it's black and white text, you don't even need it. But if it's colored background and colored text, you want that on a PC. But the NVIDIA Shield should go through your Yamaha fine.
All right. So he asked, should he run the NVIDIA Shield through the Yamaha anyway? And the answer is, well, you should at least try.
Yeah, definitely give it before buying anything. Give it a try, because it should work.
So he asked, should he get an HDMI splitter, or is there some other solution he should buy? I mean, the HDMI splitter, I don't think fixes this problem.
It won't help you because it's going
to see the lowest common denominator there, and then that's what it will only output that. So the HDMI splitter will not help you. You'd have to buy a more expensive device, like one of those HD thingies.
Yeah, it's be the HD Fury, the AVR key, which is specifically for this. The AVR key, what it does is you have the one output from your source device. It passes through the full fat video, whatever that might be, just the video to your display device, and then it has a second HDMI output that is audio only. Right. And that gets fed to your AV receiver, of course. So the AVR key would 100% work, but it's $150. Yeah, $150.
It's a lot cheaper just to try the NVIDIA Shield.
Oh, and definitely plug the Shield into your Yamaha and your Yamaha into your LG OLED, because it really should work.
Yeah. So what settings should he use on the NVIDIA Shield? What does Rob use when connecting his NVIDIA Shield to his LG OLED? Any limitations?
Oh, there's limitations.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So, as far as so it's got within the settings, so you go up, there's a little gear icon in the upper right hand corner, that's your settings. You go in there, and it has one that's for audio and video settings. So within there, it's got the HDMI video output, and it actually has like an auto detect. It has a recommended setting, and give that a try, because it really should work. And that'll actually tell you right away if your Yamaha is limiting anything, because like I say, in my case, it goes, okay, your LG can do 4K resolution, it can do 60 frames per second, it can do Rec 2020 color, and it can do, so it's sending it as, in my case, it defaulted to 420, and there doesn't seem to be a 422 override, but 420 is fine, because that's what all the sources are anyway. Right. So that's what it defaulted to on the recommended. I would probably just go with that. On the audio side, you do have the option to set it to a fixed volume output. And since you're using a AV receiver, I would definitely toggle that on, because you don't want the NVIDIA Shield itself altering its volume level coming in and out, which it does all the time on their stupid little remote, where it's a capacitive touch sensitive volume slider that you can't help but hit with the palm of your hand sometimes. So definitely turn on the fixed volume setting. And then you want to make sure that the surround sound output is set to auto, because otherwise, the other two settings are everything is in stereo, which makes sense, or it's fixed to surround sound all the time, which means it's decoding everything inside and then re-encoding it into a surround sound format. And you don't want to do that, so leave that at audio. So the audio side is pretty easy. On the HDMI side, you have a whole bunch of options, and here is where the limitation comes in. When you set whatever your HDMI output is on the NVIDIA Shield, at the moment, everything comes out in that. All right? So everything will be in a Rec 2020 container as far as the color goes. everything will be upscaled to 4K resolution. All right. Now, it does have the ability to switch frame rates on the fly. So if you go into your Netflix app or you go into your Plex app or whatever, and that is now outputting 24 frames a second, it will switch the frame rate. So that automatically switches. But the color space will always be locked to, in my case, Rec 2020 container. For some TVs, that's a big problem because some TVs, if they see that the signal coming in is Rec 2020, they lock themselves to their wide color gamut, no matter what. And that'll screw up the colors if the original source was Rec 709 colors and not Rec 2020 colors. In the case of the LG OLEDs, if you leave them set to auto, it seems to work okay. It says, okay, it's a Rec 2020 container, but the actual colors inside are Rec 709, and it seems to display them properly. I haven't noticed an issue. So you have an LG OLED, I have an LG OLED. Leaving it at Rec 2020 color doesn't seem to be a problem. I don't have a problem with the NVIDIA Shield upscaling everything to 4K resolution.
Has to happen eventually.
Your TV is going to do that anyway. Yeah. And it does switch the frame rate. So I'm okay with it, but if you have one of the TVs where it, Rec 2020 comes in and it locks itself to the wide color gamut, and now it screws up all your colors, that is a problem, and you have to manually switch the NVIDIA Shield. Now, they say they're working on that. They say they're working on automatic color space switching, but it hasn't arrived yet. So that seems to be the case for now.
All right. Yeah, solves all your problems there. Total Babble Podcast on Twitter. We have another podcast asking our podcast questions.
You were the one who forwarded this to me.
I did?
Yes, this was the one you forwarded. And I only have Total Babble Podcast because I don't know who from that podcast was writing to us, so I didn't assume.
Anyways, they have a pair of Polk RTI A1 speakers and a 10-inch Polk sub that isn't connected or being used right now, and they have a Yamaha receiver. With the Emotiva TA100 Basax integrated stereo amp be a worthwhile upgrade? Well, I don't know what AV receiver you have from Yamaha. Do you have a flagship? Do you have an entry level? Doesn't sound like it. Would it be an worthwhile upgrade? I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna be honest with you. I mean, how far away are you sitting? And I guess this is another thing, but these Polk should be easy to drive no matter what it is. And any AV receiver, especially if you only have it in 2-channel mode, should have no problems driving it. That I don't think that you would notice a sound difference.
Yeah,
that was easy for you to identify with a blindfold on without you knowing which one was playing it. I think they would sound exactly the same to you.
I mean, the Emotiva TA100, which is, as far as I'm concerned, a nice integrated stereo amp.
It is
$400, I believe it is. So
yeah, $399. Yep.
It's not insanely overpriced or anything like that. I think it's 50 or 60 watts per channel or something like that.
But it doesn't matter.
It doesn't really matter.
Anyways.
So, I mean, it has a couple of things. It has a really nice phono input that supports both moving magnet and moving coil. You wouldn't have that. I think he said his Yamaha receiver is rated at 80 watts per channel. So that's definitely not a flagship.
Yeah, I was going to say that's entry level or close to it.
I doubt it has a phono input. And if it does have a phono input, it would only support moving magnet for sure.
Right.
So if you have, a record player, and particularly if it's a moving coil record player, you could make an argument that that Emotiva has a really nice phono input. That could be a reason to get it. It also has a really nice headphone amplifier.
Okay.
So if you use
defeat the purpose of having the 2 channels
a little bit, but if you use headphones a lot and you want one device that can do both, it does have a really nice headphone amplifier built in. So those are a couple of things, phono or headphone. Those are legitimate reasons that you might go for it. It does have a summed together line level output that you could connect to a subwoofer, but it is not bass management.
Oh, well, that stinks.
All right. So it's not applying a high-pass filter to your speakers. So it's not filtering the bass out of your speakers and sending it to the sub. It's just also sending a signal to a subwoofer. It does have the ability to do that, which is great because a lot of integrated stereo amps don't have any way to connect a subwoofer other than speaker wire. But it's not bass management. So
I would prefer to have proper bass management in any sort of room, Because does Emotiva even have an auto setup on this thing? I would guess not.
No, there's no EQ on the TA100. There's no auto setup. I mean, at least you got YPOW on the Yamaha.
Yeah. Some version of it. Yeah.
I mean, basically, if you don't have a record player or headphones that need a really good headphone amp, I wouldn't, because there's no real reason. other, like
Now,
with
if you didn't
Yamaha
have
actually gives you more in a way. It gives
if
you
you
the
didn't
bass
have
management. Yeah.
anything and you said, I want to buy this thing from Emotiva, I'd be like, that's fine. I
Yeah.
mean, I would probably still push you towards a receiver because of all the other things that you're going to get,
Yeah.
including bass management and room correction.
And auto setup, yeah.
And auto setup. But yeah, would this be an upgrade? Unlikely. Unlikely.
I wouldn't go buying this hoping to get some kind of big audible upgrade unless, like I say, you got a moving coil record player.
Bob in the Philippines. I remember Bob. He was one using the VPN. Bob just started using Plex, and for the most part, he loves it. It has all of his content stored. He has all of his content stored in a RAID array that is connected via Thunderbolt to his iMac. He set up the Plex server on his iMac, and if he opens the Plex player on his iMac, everything works very well, and he sees all of the metadata on each movie nicely laid out. He connected an NVIDIA Shield to his OLED TV and ran Plex on that. It found his iMac's Plex server via his network, and he's able to play his content, but a lot of the metadata doesn't seem to show up. Just the thumbnail, poster, and a short description, but not all of the detail about the video and audio and the cast members, extra features pulled from the web, and so on. So his setup is mostly functional, but he'd like to have all those nice details and metadata to show up when he's using this Shield on his OLED. Is there a way to make that happen? Should he be using a different setup configuration for Plex? I don't have a clue, dude. But I want to blame the Mac.
Well, you can't really blame the Mac because I have the same thing on my Windows PCs.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure why this happens. So I mean, I basically all along I've set up a Plex server on whatever device I was using at the time, and I never took them offline. They're all still there. If I want to, I can still log into them. They're all attached to my one Plex account, so I can log into any of my Plex servers if they happen to be turned on and they're powered up. I can log into them at any time. And this does seem to happen. I don't know why it is. If I'm using one that's set on a Windows PC, if I'm watching it on that PC, all the metadata is there. But if it's on a remote device, some other device that's connected to my network, all of the metadata does not show up exactly like you described. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure why. So the NVIDIA Shield,
the device itself is the one that's calling for the metadata that's not coming from the Plex server.
Maybe, yeah.
If that's the case, then your computer has got probably faster internet access and maybe is using a specific database that your phone or whatever device you're using.
The things aren't even there, like the headers aren't even there. It's not like strange. It's not populating. It's just that it's not there. It's not part of it. So yeah, the NVIDIA Shield itself can be a Plex server, and at least in my setup, so if I'm using the Plex server that's on my NVIDIA Shield, and then I go and access that from one of my Windows PCs or from my phone, for that matter, the Plex app on my phone, for whatever reason, all of the metadata does show up going that direction.
Okay. So maybe it's the NVIDIA Shield is the best one.
Well, like I say, it's a fantastic Plex server. It's really fast. It does the transcoding on the fly. Like if you are you're out of your house, you're accessing it on your phone or your tablet via the internet, logging into your own Plex server back at home. That they call that the remote access. I mean, the transcoding that the NVIDIA Shield does on the fly is like A1. That's probably the best version of it. So you might consider that you want to make your Plex server on your NVIDIA Shield now instead. That would allow you to have obviously the metadata on the Plex itself. And it does seem, I mean, I don't know on an iMac. I don't have one, so I can't test it. I don't know if it'll work. Maybe it won't go in the other direction. But on a Windows PC, it does. Now, there is, of course, a huge headache. Because when you first plug in your NVIDIA Shield and you first open the Plex app, and it says log into your Plex account, so you go ahead and do that, and then it gives you the little code, and you punch that in on a web server, and that connects you to your Plex account, and that all seems good. It will then say, do you want to set up a Plex server on this NVIDIA Shield? Now, of course, Bob would have skipped past that, because he's like, I already got one. I got one. So now the question is, well, how do I get back to that setup process? Because if you...
I have a feeling the answer is going to be factory reset.
Not quite, but man, oh man, is it a pain? Because so if you go into you go into your NVIDIA Shield, you go into its Plex app, and you go into the settings in there. There's a whole section in there for Plex Media Server, and you're like, okay, I should be able to set it up in there, right? Unfortunately, no, there doesn't. It doesn't work. Not only do you have to erase the Plex app off of your NVIDIA Shield, you have to go into the NVIDIA Shield settings, go into its app section, scroll down the huge list of apps because there's a gazillion things running in the background, find the Plex Media server and erase all of its data from like the cache.
It will remember all that stuff, huh?
It'll remember all that because if you reinstall the Plex app, it'll be like, we already went through the setup. I got the data right here. So you got to manually erase every trace of Plex from the NVIDIA Shield. Then reinstall it, and then it'll go, oh, it's the first time you want to set up a Plex server. So, I mean, there is a way. It'll work, but it's a pain. It's such a pain. Because finding all of that cache data.
Sounds like factory reset's the way to go.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I even tried that, and it still remembered.
Oh, my gosh.
Because it, like, reset itself, but it's like, but the cache is still here. So, yeah, manually erase everything. Then you can go through it, and you can set up a Plex server on your NVIDIA Shield. Now, there's still another headache that I have to warn you about, because if you're on your computer and you set up a Plex server on your computer, you're like, okay, I populate my Plex server. Here's where all my storage is, and it brings all your stuff, and it brings in all the metadata automatically, and it seems all quite nice. On the NVIDIA Shield, there's no way to manually manage what is in your NVIDIA Shield's Plex server on the NVIDIA Shield itself. You must log into your Plex account in a web browser, then access your NVIDIA Shield server through that web browser, and then you can populate everything there. So you have to have a second device, which is a bit crazy.
All right.
But you have to do it through a web browser to set up your Plex server as far as all this stuff. There's one other thing, which is you said you have this storage, which doesn't sound like it's network attached storage. It's connected via Thunderbolt to his iMac. So that could be a little bit of an issue because it's not too hard to connect a network attached storage. You can actually say, what's the word that they use for it? Shoot. Where you like load network attached storage onto a device. Shoot, what is that called? I'm forgetting the name for. There's a specific name for that.
I don't know.
But yeah, it's in the NVIDIA Shield storage settings, and you can say, okay, I want to attach network storage to my NVIDIA Shield. That'll work okay. So you might have to. You got a storage connected via Thunderbolt to his iMac. That means you'd have to leave your iMac on all the time. Set up your iMac as a network drive.
Yeah, I've done that before. That does not work very well on Macs. I'll be honest with you.
It's going to be a headache, Bob.
It might be easier just to connect that directly to like your router.
Yeah.
And have it accessible through that.
Yeah, because I'm sure your router has an USB input, and I'm sure you can connect that storage via USB. It won't be as fast as Thunderbolt, but it should still be okay. USB 3 is still pretty quick.
Or, I mean, just connect it to the back of the NVIDIA Shield, too. Isn't that possible?
Or you could live without the metadata and keep what you have. Like, this isn't going to be super simple easy, Bob. It can be done. All of this stuff can be done. It could be a headache setting it up.
Everybody who listens to this podcast, and you've heard me say over and over again why I'm not
deal with home
interested
theater PCs.
in HP PCs. You now understand. If you didn't understand before, you understand now. I've reviewed a couple of devices that are HP PCs. I've reviewed HP PCs, and they've all been like this.
Yeah.
And this is way better than it used to be. This is way better than it used to be, but it's still like, oh, I just want to change one little thing. I'll see you in a week, sir. Have fun on Reddit, because that's where you're going to find your answer.
Again, if his RAID array has a USB output, you could plug it straight into the NVIDIA Shield.
That's probably the easiest solution to this.
Yeah, and then I'm assuming he has stuff on that RAID array other than just media that he might want to access from his computer. So then you would have to set up the NVIDIA Shield as a network thing that your iMac could access. I mean, you could go the other direction. Yeah. Right? That'd be another way. But yeah, either way, a little bit of fussing with this will have to be done.
Brandon at first just wanted to mention that everything seems to be working quite nicely as far as Atmos on the Apple TV 4K goes. However, Amazon Prime Video, shocking no one, on the Apple TV still isn't the greatest. Also shocking no one. Well, they could put that girl in every device that you own, but they cannot get lip sync right on their streaming service. Not only does not support Atmos yet with their one show, Jack Ryan, that's available with an Atmos soundtrack. By the way, I got 2 episodes in that show, gave up. I don't like it. He's goofy looking, and And you got to shoot him from the side. You cannot shoot him straight on. He looks like the Wallace and Gromit guy, with the big cheek, the big round cheeks. I can't stand it. Just don't shoot him straight on. Like they're shooting him like rowing, and they're shooting him doing sit-ups and stuff. I'm like, stop it. Go from the side. This guy looks way better from the side, and he's all buff out too, man. I mean, he's really done work to get this part, but. There was somebody on Facebook the other day saying how much they love the show. I'm like, 2 episodes. That's all I could handle. I'll try again, but the lip sync was also bothering me too. But I'll try again. But almost everything still plays in stereo. So Atmos is not working so well. Not only is Atmos not working, but surround sound, something that we've had
seems to be Amazon Prime's thing, man.
10 years. So anyways, he's still using his Xbox One X for that service, and that seems to be the only streaming box other than the Apple Fire TV 4K or Amazon Fire TV 4K or the Fire TV Cube that reliably plays Amazon Prime Video in 5.1. Mm-hmm. But he switched over to the Apple TV 4K for everything else. Great.
So yet again, reinforce it. There's not one box that does everything super well. I mean, the Apple TV 4K still doesn't play YouTube videos in 4K because Apple and Google no like each other.
So stupid.
So if you want YouTube, if you want Amazon, Apple TV 4K is probably not the way to go. Everything else, we're still hoping that Plex gets updated to support Atmos as well, but we don't know if that's going to happen or not. So it's like, you want Plex, you get an NVIDIA Shield. You want iTunes and Netflix, then you get Apple TV 4K. You want Amazon Prime, you probably get a Fire or an Xbox. It's all over the place.
So anyways, Rob mentioned having a custom Ascend Horizon center speaker with a very thin front to back depth. What are the exact dimensions and how much more did it cost than the standard Horizon RAL? So
if you want the exact, these are exact because Dave even gave me the CAD drawings. It is exactly 40 inches wide. It is, you want exact 11.03 inches high. So if you have exactly 11 inches, it needs a teeny bit of wiggle room in there. 0.03 inches more than 11 inches. And it is exactly 7.5 inches deep. Although it does have binding posts on the back.
Oh, right. So
they go to a little bit more than that. But the cabinet itself is exactly 7.5 inches deep. So the regular Horizon, as it is with the normal dome tweeter, is $1,000. It is $350 to add the RAL ribbon tweeter. So $1,350 is the normal price for a Sierra Horizon RAL center from Ascend. I got mine that was custom made and was essentially a one-off. Like, he designed the cabinet for me. He had no existing plans for a center with these dimensions. He made that for me. And all by itself, he was going to charge me $2,000 for that. So it's significant, but it was a lot of work. This was not a trivial thing that he did. But I bought 11 Ascend speakers all at the same time. So he priced it at $1,750, which is the same price that he normally prices any of the custom cabinets for a design that he's already made. So there are Horizon speakers that have been reoriented so that the tweeter is beside the mid-range driver, so that it isn't 11 inches high. It's now only 7.5 or 8 inches high, or you can turn that vertically, right? So now you have a tweeter above the mid-range driver or vice versa. So he already made those plans before, and normally he'll charge $1,750 for that. So it's $400 more than the standard one.
There you go. Infinite Gary. As we know, Gary had his OLED TV professionally calibrated, but for sports in particular, he tweaked some of the settings and preferred how things looked that way. He tried leaving the TV with those tweak settings for everything else, but for pretty much everything other than sports, things looks more balanced and accurate using the professionally calibrated settings. So what's our opinion on using a different picture mode with tweaks settings for specific content like sports? I'm 100% okay with that.
Yeah.
Sure.
The other picture modes are there. You're doing no damage.
Yeah. I mean, go ahead. Knock yourself.
I mean, I purposely have a day and a night mode.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, my apartment is not 100% light controlled during the day, and I do sometimes watch TV during the day. It is definitely brighter than at night. And I want to still see all the shadow detail, so I have slightly different settings for day and night mode, which a professional calibrator most of them do that.
Right.
They'll set up both a day and a night mode. But, I mean, right there is a thing saying, hey, some situation about what I'm watching changed. In my case, ambient light levels changed. So I'm using a different picture mode, but it's as simple as toggling between two different picture modes. If you want a third picture, I mean, I have a third picture mode for playing video games because I want no latency. I want as little lag as I can get during video games. That's a third picture mode. I not very often. But
I love playing video games, but man, I just can't find the time.
Neither can I. But when I do, for occasions here and there, like I want to play some Cuphead, and Cuphead is a twitchy game, so I want the low latency.
Yeah.
Throw the TV there into game mode, right? So third mode. So hey, if you want a sports mode, knock yourself out. TV's got it. Yeah, I got no problem with that.
Cuphead looked like a fun game.
It is fun. It's hard.
It's super hard, though.
Hard.
I've been playing Slay the Spire, which is a card deck building game, which is it's perfect for me. I could play 5 minutes of it and press save and then come back to it. You don't have to do anything. So I just, my kids are playing Overwatch and all that other crap. I can't be bothered. Matt has an SVS SP12 NSD. It is the only subwoofer he owns, and he says he really isn't in the position to upgrade it or add a second one at the moment. His room is open concept, so he's dealing with roughly 1,400 square, not cubic, feet. So a million. Obviously, a sealed 12-inch sub isn't really adequate, but he's making do for now. He wants to know, is he running a risk of damaging the SB12 NSD? Is the amplifier well protected, or could he potentially turn it up too loud to the point it could damage itself? This is SVS. They do not damage themselves.
This is a sledge amplifier. That's SVS's own design.
Yeah.
Also, it's a sealed sub. Sealed subs inherently are a little better protected in that, the driver has a real tough time bottoming out because as it pushes farther and farther out, the pressure inside of the cabinet stays constant. So it's trying to suck it back in. The air itself is
trying to create a vacuum, basically, a bit of a vacuum.
Yeah. So, so you combine it being sealed with it being a sledge amp, which is really, really well protected.
Yeah.
We crank that thing up pretty much as high as you want. I mean, if you're hearing bad noises,
then yes,
turn her down a little.
Turn down. Yeah.
But no, you're pretty darn safe. You're about as safe as I could say you could be with any subwoofer. Yeah, you're good.
This TV is a 55-inch LG LH90 that he's owned for 8 years now.
I have one of those.
Of course you do. One of these days, I'm going to go to Rob's apartment, and it's just going to be like the clearance. Dude,
it is a mess right now in my place.
Of Best Buy.
It's just waiting for some time to clear up. It is a mess.
So it's one of the first full array local dimming LCD TVs, and it still looks fantastic. He'd like a larger screen size, and of course 4K and HDR would be cool. But again, he's not in a position to upgrade at the moment, so he'd like to know, do the LEDs in the backlight dim over time? He's kept the same backlight setting for 8 years now, but should he be bumping that up a little to compensate for LEDs gradually dimming over the years? Now, Rob and I spoke about this briefly before the podcast. I mean, I don't think LEDs dim all that much. I mean, that's sort of their deal, is that they're just super bright.
I mean, certainly not like a lamp.
Yeah, like a lamp's going to lose like 50, over its lifetime, whatever its lifetime is, like 50% of its brightness. I don't think that happens with LEDs. I think they just die. You're gonna, they're either on or they're off. They're kind of binary in that way, but. I mean, you could bump it up and see, but it doesn't sound like you're experiencing like, oh, it just looks dimmer than it used to. I don't know.
Right.
I watched this movie that I've watched many times on my TV, and it looks different to me now. Should I adjust the backlight? And that, then I would say yes.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you can adjust it. There's nothing. I mean, I'm not going to stop you. I'm not going to say don't.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, go ahead. If you like the look better with the backlight setting clicked up a few ticks, go for it. Yeah. I mean, technically, they do still rate it as a half life. Like a half brightness thing, which in the case of these LEDs is 20,000 hours. So
8 years.
If they are,
it
could be, yeah. So I mean, if they are dimming over time, it is very gradual. Certainly far more gradual than a lamp and a projector. But basically answers to say if you want to give it a try, there's no harm in doing it. I get you could measure, I suppose, right? How many nits am I getting now when on a full white field or on an anti checkerboard? How many nits are coming out? But you would have had to measure at the beginning to make that comparison.
Yeah, at this point,
which we know you didn't do. So yeah, it's not a concern. Give it a click up if you like it better. Leave it there.
All right, so we've talked a bit about gamma, but could we explain it in a little more detail? His TV just gives him setting options of low, medium, high. He followed David Katzmeyer's settings for the LH90 from CNET, which have looked great all this time. David said to set the gamma to low. Matt tried the medium setting and noticed that the image looked a bit higher in contrast overall, but it lost a bit of shadow detail. So what do we recommend? I'm sure we recommend low. That's what it sounds like. But yeah, you want to talk more about gamma and knock yourself out, Rob?
Yeah. So gamma, the way to understand this, so there's a signal that's being sent to your television, and we'll just go by the standard, which is the IRE scale, which goes from 0 to 100. And the idea is that each step along the IRE scale is supposed to be like the least perceptible difference, right? So from 0 to 1 is like, I can just see that 1 is a teeny tiny bit brighter than 0. Right. And 2 is a teeny tiny bit brighter than 1. And since we have in 8-bit video, theoretically 256 steps, but we cut off from 0 to 16 and we cut off from 235 to 255, we basically have around 200 steps to work with. So they put in a step in between each of those so that it's a very smooth, you don't see any stepping between 0 and 1 and 1 and 2. There's a step in between, which is imperceptible. So if you go from 0 to a half and from a half to 1, that looks like a completely smooth transition. And it's a very, very small difference anyway. But our eye doesn't perceive greater and greater amounts of light linearly. At the very, very low end, from 0 light to a teeny, teeny, tiny bit of light, it's a minuscule difference where our eye says, oh, there's some light now. Whereas at very bright ranges, we need a whole bunch more light to be able to tell that it's brighter versus the step before it. So there's a curve to our eye. Now, in the old CRT days, it was literally a coincidence that the phosphors in a CRT responded to this incoming signal in a way that was very close to the way our eye tracks. So you go from 0 to 1, and the CRT got a teeny tiny bit brighter, but just enough for eye to notice. Whereas up at the higher end, going from 99 to 100, the CRT got significantly brighter, enough that is just enough for our eye to notice. So there were these curves that we ended up with. Mm-hmm. And so the signal is this linear thing. That would be a gamma of 1. No changes made. It's just this linear straight line. But then we have these other curves. And as you increase the numerical value of the gamma, you can think of it. So think of it like a diagonal line, because not everybody's looking at the YouTube video. Think of a diagonal line going up, starting at the bottom on the left and up at the top on the right. Now imagine that you grabbed that line with your right hand and pulled it down towards the lower right hand corner. That would be like increasing the numerical value of gamma. It's like pulling a bowstring. Right. So that the higher the numerical value, the more you're bending that graph down towards the lower right hand corner, which means that if you have a higher numerical value of gamma, the difference from 0 to 1 and 1 to 2 and 2 to 3 is even slighter than if you had a lower numerical value of gamma. Then the jump from 1 to 2 would be a little bit more. And you notice it most in the lowest ranges. Once you get up to the top, like once you get up to 100, they're all the same. They all end up being the same brightness way up at the top. So that's kind of what gamma is about. It's the rate of rise from dark to light in response to the signal. The signal said, get a bit brighter. Well, exactly how much brighter depends on your gamma setting. High numerical value, it got a teeny bit brighter. Low numerical value, it got a little bit brighter than that in response to the signal. So that's kind of what's going on with gamma. Does that basically answer that until the second question?
Yeah.
What do we recommend? David Katzmeyer, he goes by the gamma of 2.2. That's what he used to go by back when the LH90 came out. And that is what pretty much all television content is mastered to, is a gamma of 2.2. Now, movies that were meant specifically for a completely blacked out movie theater usually used a gamma of 2.4 right? So 2.4, slightly higher numerical value of gamma, which means that in the very dark ranges, it's not getting it's even more gradual, which makes sense in a completely blacked out
Right,
room.
sure.
Your pupil is wide open. The amount of light you need to notice a difference is even a bit smaller. So movies 2.4, most television 2.2. He's like, is a TV. You're probably watching TV. You probably aren't in a 100% blacked out room. I'll target 2.2 because that's what most things are mastered for. That's what ratings still goes for. Some calibrators, some reviewers are like, I want movies in a completely blacked out room. I target 2.4. So the low setting on the LH90 is basically 2.2. That's why he recommends it. The medium setting is pretty close to 2.4. And then the high setting is like a 2.6 or 2.8. It looks too dark. Yeah. So if you're in a completely black room, then using the medium setting, it probably would make sense. I'm betting you're not in a 100% black room. The low setting is probably correct.
So you tried reading up a bit on gamma. Chris Heinewens. Did I say that right?
Heinen. Yeah. Lots of N's in there.
There's lots of them. Which gamma is correct article in particular? It was rather confusing. There were quite a few mentions of BT 1886. That's when Paul Revere did his ride, I think. What is that, and how would you go about using it on this LH90? I mean, you don't need to use it. You just set it to low. You're done.
Not only that, you can't on your LH90, so that answers that part. You don't have to worry about it. Yeah. But BT 1886, it's relatively new. I think 2011 is when that came out. And the whole idea was, so when they were doing HDR, they changed away from gamma. They're like, we're not just going to use this curve, which is like a floating curve, right? Depending on where you start, like where is black on this curve? Where is peak white? Well, that could change. You could float that along the curve, but you would follow along the curve. Well, with HDR, they went away from that. They're like, no, now we have absolute values. This signal level means exactly this many nits. We're not following a curve. It's a table of 1-to-1. And so they changed the name from gamma to an electro-optical transfer function, right? So electrical to optical and a transfer function, a lookup table. That's what it is. Here's what the signal says, how many nits ought to come out. It's exactly 1-to-1. So BT 1886, it's not exactly that for SDR because the black level and the peak white level could still be different. So in BT 1886, you measure what is the blackest that this television can produce and what is the peak white level that we have chosen. And then it gives you a formula for everywhere between those 2 points. Here's exactly how many nits should come out based on the signal level, that 0 to 100 IRE signal level that we talked about before. Now, in essence, it ends up looking a heck of a lot like 2.4 gamma. It's really not very different from 2.4 gamma, but it's a little bit more similar to the way HDR is handled in that after you measure black and peak white and apply the formula, it now has specific, this signal means exactly this many nits values. It's not just following a floating curve. So that's BT 1886, and you can't do it on your LH90, so you don't have to worry.
All right, Curtis. Curtis asked us previously how we determine whether or not a subwoofer can genuinely play down to 20 hertz. We basically seem to say that we believe the specs given by some manufacturers, but don't believe the specs given by other manufacturers. And we rely on our experience to determine which ones we believe and which ones we don't. But what exactly are the specs that help us decide? What numbers are we looking at? Which spec in a long list of numbers tells us whether or not a subwoofer can genuinely play down to 20 hertz? We've said minus 3 dB or the negative 3 dB point a bunch of times. What exactly does that mean? Okay, so I did not get this far down these questions when I was trying to prep the 5 minutes.
This is a good question. I'm happy to answer this.
This is a good question. Yeah. So when you go to a website, or a spec sheet, and you will see that they will have most speaker manufacturers will tell you, this is the frequency response. The frequency range of which we play.
Yeah, and you usually see the spec frequency response. Sometimes it'll just say like frequency range or even just frequency. And sometimes they'll have one that says frequency extension.
Yeah,
but it'll be something. If the word frequency will probably be.
You look for the word frequency. Yeah, and there'll be a range in there. And sometimes, like for a normal speaker, like just today, I was looking at one that said that it played from 40 hertz up to 22 kilohertz.
Sure,
right. That's what it said. But then it had a separate spec which said that it's usable, or what they didn't really say, it's negative 3 dB is from 60 hertz up to 20 kilohertz.
Okay.
So basically, what it was saying is, this speaker will make sound that is audible, from at some measurable from 40 hertz up to 22.
Okay.
That can be measured, but it can play flat, basically flat-ish, with a 3 dB variance from 40 hertz up to 20 kilohertz.
Yeah. So
And that's what we're looking for in these subwoofers. We're looking for that specification.
Yeah.
We're looking for the specification that says it'll has a negative 3 dB from this to this. And the lower one is what we're looking at to see whether or not it should play down to 20 hertz. If a subwoofer manufacturer does not say negative 3 dB, they just say we'll play from 18 hertz up to 120 hertz, then you're like, okay, that's just how much output this thing could actually make noise that could be measured from there to there. Where's the negative 3 dB point? Well, if you've ever seen an actual subwoofer be measured, you'll see that it'll go along pretty nicely, and then usually it drops off precariously, towards the end there, where it's not really making a sound they can hear. So you have to back that number up, and usually you're backing it up quite a bit. And depending on the speaker manufacturer and what they've said about it, it could be, like I said, the other speaker was playing from 40 to whatever. And then when you look at the negative 3 dB, it was 60. That's 20. I mean, 20 hertz difference is quite a bit. Now, subwoofers may not be quite that dramatic, but they can be, a good 5-10 dB. I mean, a frequency difference, hertz difference there.
Yeah. So imagine you took a speaker or a subwoofer and you took it outside, or you put it in an anechoic chamber, somewhere where the room isn't going to have an effect on the sound anymore.
That's right.
That's where you want to measure a speaker or a subwoofer. And they'll play a sweep through that. So it's all the frequencies, all the audible frequencies anyway, but they'll usually go from like 10 hertz up to like 30 kilohertz or something like that. In a subwoofer, obviously, you wouldn't play that high because it's never meant to play that high, but you might go from like 10 hertz to 300 hertz or something like that. But you'll play a sweep. And that sweep signal is all of those frequencies at the exact same volume level. That's what the signal is asking the thing to play. All of those frequencies, one after another, in a sweep, but all at the exact same volume level. Now you measure, what does the speaker or the subwoofer actually do in response to that signal? Now, if it were perfect, you would see a flat line on your measurement. It would be all of these frequencies played at the exact same volume level, because that's what the signal asked me to do, and that would be the measurement. But no speaker or subwoofer can actually do that across all of the audible frequencies. So you'll see some squiggles, and then at some point you'll see the graph like roll off.
Right.
Where it's just like, you're asking me to play these lower and lower frequencies at the same volume as all the others, but I just can't. So they're quieter now. And you see that graph roll off. So we look at that, and you'll see some squiggles up and down, and we're hoping they stay within a range of plus or minus 3 decibels from the average, right? There'll be a straight line that you could draw through the middle of all those squiggles, and a little bit go a little bit above and a little bit below, but we're looking for a range plus or minus 3 decibels across that median line. And then you get down to the low frequencies, and it starts to roll off. So we say, okay, how low can you go before you are 3 decibels quieter than that median line, and now everything below that is much quieter than that?
Right.
That is the minus 3 decibel or the negative 3 decibel point of that subwoofer or that speaker. That's how low it can play until it just starts to roll off. You get down to minus 3 dB, which, like we say, is still within that range that we're looking for, plus or minus 3 decibels. So we consider that flat response. We consider that accurate response to the signal. We give it some tolerance. We allow it to be 3 decibels quieter, and we still consider that flat. But then everywhere below that, it's quieter than the signal asks it to play, and there's no way to make it louder. It's just, that's the limit of the thing.
Yeah, that's what it can do.
So when a subwoofer says, I can play down to 20 hertz or 19 hertz, plus or minus 3 decibels. It means they hopefully measured it outdoors, and they got that graph, and at 20 hertz or 19 hertz, it's 3 decibels quieter than median line, still within our tolerance range. And then everywhere below that, it's quieter than that. And there's no way to get it loud enough to equal what the signal was asking it to do. We say, okay, that's how low this subwoofer can accurately play. All by itself, no help from the room, no help from equalization. That's its frequency range. Now, some manufacturers, we believe them when they give us that number, and some manufacturers we don't.
And the reason is very simple. There are people out there that do the measurement the right way. The CEA, was it 20 something?
2010, yeah. There's a new name for it now, but we're used to calling it CEA 2010, and most places still list it as that.
And basically, they take it outside. They put a microphone like 2 meters away. I think is what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, you're allowed to put it 1 meter away, but 2 meters is recommended.
Yeah, 2 meters away from the front baffle of the subwoofer, and they play the sweep and they measure it. That is the standardized way of measuring this. So if you take an SVS subwoofer and you take it outside and you do this measurement, you're going to get a result that is very similar to what the claims are on the website. In fact, sometimes the claims on the website for SVS speakers, subwoofers, and other manufacturers will be conservative.
That's right.
They'll say we play down to 20 hertz, but with plus or minus 3 dB. But you take it outside, and the person who's measuring is going, man, this thing went down to 18 hertz, no problem.
That's right.
So that's a conservative measurement. Therefore, and it has happened over and over again with SVS. There's a history of SVS giving us specs that bear out when third-party measurements happen. There are other manufacturers who, when you take their subwoofers outside, you're like, nah, that's not even close.
Right. And you're like, how did they get that number? And it turns out they measured it with the subwoofer in a closet.
Oh, right. Yeah. And this happened, and I've told us about this on this story before on the podcast a number of times, but Elemental Designs.
That's right.
I measured their speaker, and I was like, man, this thing doesn't play anywhere, because they were saying it's a full range speaker. It plays down to blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, man, it barely gets down to 80 hertz. And it was a tower speaker. And they're like, oh, yeah, well, how did you measure it? I'm like, well, I actually measured it in our room, but the room was like tons of acoustical absorption all over it. It was back in Jacksonville, where I had essentially like 18 4-inch panels, in a 10 by 11 foot room. It was just covered in panels. And then I was 1 meter away and everything else. And they're like, oh yeah, we measured it in our room in the corner.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, okay, well then that makes sense why you got this weird result. So or the DIN, whenever you see that DIN specification, you're like,
DIN is okay, because that tells you, if you look up what does DIN mean, and we talked about it last week, and it is a standard. It's like, here's how you measure it, and it's essentially the negative 10 decibel point, right? So again, you're looking at that graph. The signal said to play at all these frequencies at the same volume. At some point, it starts rolling off, and they go all the way down to where it's 10 decibels quieter than what the signal asked it to play. And that's the figure they pick. For whatever reason, I'm not exactly sure why, but that's the figure they pick. Now, it's standardized, so you could measure every speaker and subwoofer that way, and then you could compare them. Apples to apples. We measured these all the same way, and here's the minus 10 decibel point of all of them. I don't know how useful that is.
Nah. Yeah. It's like saying the top speed of a vehicle, but you measured the top speed as it was going, down a very steep hill, with a refrigerator full of, lead in the back seat. It's like, yeah, okay, technically, if I throw it out of a plane, it can get this fast.
Yeah. I mean, I do kind of know where the DIN came from, which is, like we mentioned last week, if you put that thing in a corner, you get about 9 decibels of of boundary gain reinforcement. So I guess the idea is they think everything is going in a corner. So I don't know. It's a little bit weird, but that would be one of those. Frequency extension might be listed as a DIN specification. And now that means it was negative 10 decibels at that point.
All right. Moani on Twitter. Moani has a JVC X770 770 projector in a room with full light control. He'd like to get a new 120-inch screen fixed frame. What do we recommend, and what gain should he get for the screen material? Well, if you're going to go with what we're going to recommend, you're not going to have very many options as far as gain, because I think there's one.
I suppose you could go for the gray or the silver or something.
Yeah. But you're going to want to go to Amazon and pick up a silver ticket screen.
Yeah.
They're extremely inexpensive. They're very easy to put together. They're easy to hang.
Yeah.
I'm very happy with mine. And
just their basic white.
Just whatever the white is. Yeah, it's probably gonna be like a 1.1, 1.2 or something like that.
Yeah, they call it a 1.1 gain.
Yeah, you really don't need it in a light control room. You really don't need that much gain, generally speaking. So
actually,
whatever they offer you.
120 inches with the X770. That's almost like a perfect pairing, even for HDR. You'd have to put it into the high lamp mode for HDR, but if you do, you'll get the full 100 nits at that screen size. 135 inches, you're pushing it. You probably wouldn't be able to hit a full 100 nits for HDR from that projector on 135. 150, you definitely can't, but 120 is like right in the butter zone. So you don't need additional gain from the screen. So yeah, the basic white, silver ticket, I mean, that's all the way. Now, there's a couple of things. What if he wants masking? We don't know for sure, but what if he did? Or what if he well, he's fixed frame, so we know that, but what if he wants acoustically transparent?
Oh, well, then, yeah. Then you got another different problem.
Yeah. So Silver Ticket does actually have a woven acoustically transparent screen material. It's pretty good, but the weave on it is like, there's enough of a texture, because it's a woven screen, so there's a bit of a texture, and there's holes in it, so the sound can come through. And by and large, I think you'd want to be about 12, maybe 13 feet away from that screen before you wouldn't see the weave and you wouldn't see the holes, like, ever. And so if you were, 12 or 13 feet away from a 120-inch screen, you're now into like a 40-degree field of view, which is still very nice. But I like a 45-degree field of view, so I'd want to be a little bit closer. I don't know what you would choose. So there are alternatives. So for masking or for acoustically transparent where you want to sit close, that's where we'd recommend Seymour AV.
Right. They're a lot more expensive, though.
They're a lot more expensive. They're very nice screens.
But they're very good.
Nice screens.
Yeah, it's worth the money.
Yeah.
But if you don't need it, then the Silver Ticket is the way to go.
That's right. But we like Seymour because if you want masking, they actually have a manual masking system where there are magnets built into the frame, and you physically go up there with a masking panel, and it snaps into place with the magnets.
Yeah.
Which is way less expensive than motorized masking, like way less expensive than motorized masking. Now, they do have motorized masking as well, which is less expensive than a lot of their competitors, but we're still talking in the $4,000 or $5,000 range now for motorized masking. And they have acoustically transparent fabrics where you can get like 8 feet, definitely 10 feet, but they have their ultra fine where you can get like 8 feet away from it without seeing the weave or the holes. So options there, but more money.
All right, Nick, this is going to be our last one.
Okay.
I need to eat lunch. When it comes to soundproofing the basement, Nick thinks the stuff we've said about how to construct the floor and the walls makes sense, but he's heard us talk about drop tile or suspended ceilings many times, and that doesn't make any sense to him at all. Okay. We've talked about specialized ceiling tiles that have extra thickness and mass to them, but they'd still be installed in a regular T-bar metal frame system, right? Mm-hmm. As such, there'd still be small gaps between each of the tiles and the flanking path created by the metal T-bars, wouldn't there? Soundproofing company is 100% against drop tile ceilings, so how come we recommend them? Well, you're getting a little confused because we don't necessarily, when we talk about drop tile ceilings, we're not talking about soundproofing. We may be talking about it at the same time, but we're not always.
Well, I wouldn't blame Nick at all because I know the way I've phrased it. This
I'm
not exactly like this.
Yeah, but usually when I'm talking about drop tile ceilings, I'm talking about absorption and ease of placing in ceiling speakers and all this other stuff. So you can put a ton of absorption above a drop tile ceiling to help with your getting the reflections down in your room. It's easy to do in a way that you don't even see it. So with doing that, you can then add just a couple of panels in the room at like the first reflection points, and you're pretty much done. You don't have to have a lot of this other panels all around your room that some people find visually irksome. But yeah, that's so when I'm talking about drop tiles, I know that we talk about it at the same time as soundproofing, but it's not always it's not like the component of the soundproofing necessarily, because the soundproofing comes from the decoupling and adding mass to the walls and the ceiling, that the hat channels and all that other stuff. But the drop tile, I don't think that necessarily is a soundproofing mechanism. It's just another way of adding absorption to your room. Yeah,
well, I'll definitely say that I've phrased it in a way where I, listening to myself, I would be like, yeah, he was talking about soundproofing, the actual like containment of sound in one room so that you don't hear it in another. So yeah, I'll try to go through a progression because so if you talk to the folks over at soundproofingcompany.com, whom I love and I recommend all the time, but they are like, here's the result we're going to or here's the construction we're going to recommend. And if you build it our way, you'll have a pretty darn soundproof room.
Right.
Which is, nobody can guarantee that you literally won't hear a peep, right? You play something at 120 decibels in your theater and you're right on the other side. You might hear a peep. But what they would have you construct is like, it's a soundproof room, and they sweat the details, and they're looking to have nobody ever come back to them and said, I spent all this money and did what you said and it didn't work.
Right.
So you build it their way, it's going to work, and I stand behind that 100%. But building it their way is difficult and expensive and takes up a fair amount of floor space, and not everybody wants, or drops your ceiling height, and not everybody wants to do that. And they're looking for something where they're like, I'm okay with hearing it a little bit, but I don't want it to be bad, right? And there are degrees in between. And since nobody's paying me for my advice and nobody's going to come looking for a refund, I'm willing to give in-between solutions. So let's say you're in a basement, you have no ceiling whatsoever, just the exposed floor ceiling the joists that are holding up the floor above you. Of course, that's the worst it could possibly be, right? Sounds just going through there willy-nilly. Now, if you put up just one layer of drywall, that's your standard finishing, maybe you have some furring strips or something like that so that it's level, but you essentially have one layer of drywall, screwed directly to the floor joists that are above you. That gives you a little bit of soundproofing compared to the wide open floor joists, but very, very little. It's not terribly effective at blocking sound from getting upstairs. Now you put some insulation, just your regular bad insulation, above that one layer of drywall in between your floor joists, and it's a teeny bit better again, but really not very much. So where I talk about a drop tile ceiling in a basement being somewhat of a sound, like an actual soundproofing, a sound isolation, is that it can be better than just a single layer of drywall attached to your floor joists. Now, probably not if you get the super cheap, like 1/16 of an inch tiles, because then you might as well just have a wide open floor joist situation again. But if you get a T-bar ceiling, insulation above that, and you get the proper, fairly heavy, fairly thick, even with kind of a solid layer on top of them, ceiling tiles that are labeled as soundproofing ceiling tiles, that is actually more effective in sound isolation than just one layer of drywall. So that's where I talk about that as a potential soundproofing sound isolation solution. Is it as good as what soundproofing company would have you build with sound clips and hat channels and 2 layers of drywall with green glue? Not even close. Not even close to as good as that, but it's better than one layer of drywall. Why is it better? Well, the mass and the absorption, so the drywall has essentially no absorption to it, but you got insulation above it. You have the same insulation above it, so that's a wash. With the proper ceiling tiles that have some thickness and some mass to them, those by themselves, even with the little gap that's in between there because of the T-bar ceiling, it's about as effective as the drywall all by itself. Those are about a wash. But now you have the decoupling of having that surface not in physical contact with the ceiling joists. Yeah, there's the T-bars holding them in there, but they're essentially decoupled, and that decoupling by itself makes it more effective than just one layer of drywall all by itself. So that's where that comes in. The next progression, of course, would be 2 layers of drywall with green glue, and then above that would be decoupling the 2 layers of drywall with green glue. You get that. I mean, that's way better than a suspended ceiling, but the suspended ceiling all by itself could be better than one layer of drywall. So that's why I've talked about that. The last part of it is we've sometimes recommended you actually do finish the ceiling like with drywall as you would, and then put a suspended ceiling below that because you're equaling the height of some soffits or something like that. We talked about that just a couple of weeks ago, right? One guy was going to have a soffit on one end of his room, and we were like, finish it in drywall as normal, as a basement finisher normally would, with different ceiling heights, the soffit being a bit lower, but then maybe consider putting a drop tile ceiling below the rest of the finished drywall ceiling. And once you have insulation and ceiling tiles above that, now that's better than just the one layer of drywall. So we've talked about soundproofing the ceiling with a drop tile ceiling in that way as well. So I hope that clears it up. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. All right. His last question. He'd like to get a set of full-sized, over-the-ear sealed headphones to use at work, but he also like a very low noise floor and clean amplification. He'd like to keep the total price under $200 if possible. He was considering getting an Audio Quest Dragonfly USB DAC to handle the output from his computer and a pair of Sony 7506 headphones that we've recommended in the past. Is that the very best option for him? He's concerned about comfort since he'll be wearing the headphones for several hours at a time. Will they get hot? Is there any such thing as sealed headphones that are somewhat breathable? No. That's like, there is no such thing as breathable sealed headphones.
Yeah, breathable kind of means they're not sealed.
They're not
anymore.
sealed. Yeah. So how much does this Dragonfly thing cost? Because
okay, so there's the Dragonfly Black, which is about $100.
So he has $100 for headphones.
That's right. And you can get the 7506s off Amazon for usually $80, at the most $90. So for $200 budget, you can certainly get both of those.
Yeah, and I hate to. I'm just going to tell you straight up, man. I don't think that. I mean, I know that over the ear are more comfortable than on ear or in ear, but you know, I wear these headphones, which are for me over ear, barely. And at the end of a 2-hour podcast, I am 100% ready to get these things off my head. So they are not particularly tight. My open back ones are bigger and they're more comfortable, but you know, same sort of deal. It's just after a couple hours, you're going to want to take them off no matter what.
I mean, yeah, the 7506s for 3 or 4 years running now have been the Wirecutter's top pick for an affordable pair of headphones. Like we mentioned, and this is completely true still to this day, you go into almost any recording studio and they'll have probably several pairs of Sony 7506s. You watch the behind the scenes of anybody doing like voice recording or something like that, they probably have a pair of 7506s on their head.
So those are, I mean, I think those are a really good choice for you. I have no problems with you doing that. If you could spend a little bit more, you might want to look at the Sennheiser Momentum series. Those are $250 by themselves right now at Amazon, but I imagine they probably go on sale. There's also a version 2.0, so there may be a price drop at some point coming up. But I like
what about the Audio Technicas, the ATH M50s?
M50s, those are good, and they are bulletproof, man. Those are like 100, and I think you can get them down like at 120 on sale.
150 for sure, not more than that.
150 for sure, but 120 I think, or 25 is what I got them for. And I just sat there and basically checked Amazon every day until they were on sale.
I mean, the ATH M50, or I guess the M50X now. I mean, they list them as a hybrid design. They list them as like being sealed, but with some venting to them. But you actually experienced them in person. Do you have any of that?
I don't know what the hell they're talking about. that's I don't know what they're talking about.
He's saying he wants to use them at work, so I'm assuming part of why he wants sealed is that he doesn't want other people hearing his music while he's at work, right? So you definitely do want sealed.
Know that you like all that gangster rap stuff, man.
Right. I mean, like I can tell you, I've got some Sennheiser, the HD 598s, which are completely open back. So anything I'm playing, you can easily hear what I'm listening to if I have those on. Now, those are super comfortable and breathable, and I could wear them for hours and hours and hours and hours and never have a problem, but they're completely open back. They're not sound isolating at all.
The M50s, I thought, are a good headphone. They do start off a bit tight. And many of these headphones are going to do that anyways. They're going to start off a bit tight depending on the size of your head, too. So I think I have a pretty normal size head, but what do I know?
I got a big old noggin, so
the M50s I think would be a good choice as well. I could get behind that. They are very, very rock solid as far as good sound quality and good build quality. Those pads are gonna go way, way, way before. And I've had those since. I mean, I've had them since Dina. And they're still at my friend's house getting used right now. I don't know why I haven't got those back. I need to get those back.
I don't have a huge reason to steer you away from the Sony 7506s because they're less expensive. They sound great. You are at work, so the coiled cord that they come with isn't probably a problem. That's one little thing.
They don't have a straight cord option anymore. They used to. I have a straight cord option, but that cord is forever long.
Yeah,
like. It's you're probably, if you're going to be sitting close to your source, which it sounds like you're going to be, then I'd definitely go with the coiled one because the straight cord, dude, it's like sit on the couch long.
And I mean, one of the reasons the Wirecutter continually loves them is that they said like they have a fairly large panel of people who listen to all these headphones, and everybody finds the 7506s pretty comfortable to wear.
Right.
Now, for hours and hours on end, they are sealed. They are going to get hot. I can't say they're not. I mean, that's just, but everything else is the M50s are also going to get hot after that many hours. So, you take them off every hour or so. Give yourself a little break, and then you'll probably be fine. Now, does he need a USB DAC? Does he need a Dragonfly?
Not for well, I mean, he wants low noise floor, right? I mean, I don't know what his headphone output is like.
Yeah, I'd try him without first. That's what
I think you get the headphones first. Yeah. I'm looking up. Let me see, DAC. Let me see here. I think this is it. I'm looking up. There's another There's a lot of little USB things. $100 seems pricey to me.
The Dragonfly is good, though. I mean, as much as I do not like AudioQuest, talking about companies where like one bad product and we kind of like AudioQuest is the inverse of that, like a gazillion bad products that I hate and then one product from them that I like, which is the Dragonfly.
Yeah, but I like the DAC Magic XS.
Okay.
From Cambridge Audio.
Oh,
it's
right.
Little itty bitty device that has a very small little USB cord that you plug in there, and it has a headphone output and a volume control on it.
Okay.
Now, I like that one. It's $75, so there's $25 you just saved right there.
Okay.
I think that one would be that would be good, and you could probably find that. I'm on the Cambridge Audio website, so it's probably at Amazon for less.
So you know what? Maybe from Amazon you order the Sonys and the Audio Technicas. So get the M50Xs and the 7506s. Give them both a try. Send back the one you don't like. Keep the one you prefer. And then try them with your computer just all by itself. And if you're like, nope, not good enough, then try one of the USB DACs. Yeah, but I wouldn't necessarily spend it all at once.
Trying to see if they have it. Man, dude, this doing research for this podcast just absolutely destroys what I've got on Amazon. Like I get all kinds of weird suggestions. It looks like it's still $74 on here. The AudioQuest Dragonfly, I guess, is very, very small too, so that's kind of nice.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a USB dongle. It looks like a thumb drive, basically.
It does. It looks exactly like a thumb drive. The DAC Magic is a little bit nicer, I think.
Alrighty.
Okay, that's it. So what else we got, Rob?
So still on the list, we have Kevin, we have Ted M. Well, Ted, we know Ted, and he's not talking about his speakers in his tiny room, but he is still talking about legacy audio. So that
all right.
And we have Bradford, who signed up for Patreon. So Bradford's question came in later in the week. You will be answered next week there, Bradford.
All right. We want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank Iris for going to www.avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link and leaving us a PayPal donation. Thank you very much, Iris.
Yeah, Iris, thank you so much for that donation. We appreciate it.
And it's impossible for me not to think of Iris from, was it Flash?
Oh, sure.
Right. Iris West?
Yes, Iris West.
It is impossible for me not to picture this person as that person. So you are... until I know otherwise, you're Iris West. I'm sorry. I apologize. That's what my brain does, but it does. I can't help it. I don't know very many Irises in my life, and I don't know that one either, but she's the only one. So in my mind, that is the person who is asking us these questions. And we also want to thank our 72 patrons over at patreon.com, including Bradford. Thank you guys.
Yeah, that's patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you would like to sign up. And thanks so much to our 72 patrons. Bradford, thank you for being one of them.
For AV Rant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.